Welcome to this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through the insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have Steve Gallegos. He is a former US Marine law enforcement officer, singer, songwriter, recording artist, board certified trial lawyer, internet startup founder, and published commercial photographer. And there are several things more. It will be difficult to name all of them at the same time. Welcome to the show, Steve.
AJ, thank you so much for producing this show, for hosting it, and for having me as a guest.
You are welcome, and you are our master today. And because we will be talking about, and the most important part is how to live remarkably, because that's what we are here on this planet. And so, my first question to you, Steve, is this itself. You have lived your life to in a happy extent, doing so many things at the same time or in several times. How have you managed to play so many roles and still going so strong, so remarkably in your life? People struggle with just one role, one life. So, to understand from you, this is my first question. How exactly did you do it so that through you, people get to learn all about how to live remarkably?
AJ, thank you for that question. It's a very important question, and I agree with you. Most of us, we are taught as young children that we are supposed to go out and become adults and do one thing, right? Our parents say, you're going to be a lawyer, you're going to be a doctor, you're going to be an engineer, you're going to be a teacher, whatever. And so, as kids, at least in my generation, and probably yours too, it was reinforced that your role is to grow up and go out and be one thing. And I found, and you've probably learned this too, that there are a lot of young adults in college and university studying something that they thought they were interested in, studying something that mom and dad said, you're going to study law, you're going to study medicine. And then the child gets into those studies and they don't like it. And now they're conflicted because, well, do I do where my heart takes me? Do I go where my passion lies, or do I continue following in the footsteps of my parents or the adults who are guiding me? And so it's a big conflict. I have that conflict as well, but what I learned for me, I thrive in environments where I am having fun. This is the number one key. If I'm having fun in a job, in a role, I will stay there. Once that job no longer becomes fun, and what I mean fun is not ha ha ha, we're playing all the time like little kids. No, what I mean by fun is it fulfilling? Do I love to wake up and go to work in that particular vocation today? Do I want to go to work in that company? And most people don't, right? They wake up and they're like, oh my gosh, it's Monday and I got to go to the office and I got to go deal with these customers and with these clients and with these coworkers and with this boss and manager. And they have a very, very difficult time. So, with that kind of attitude, with that kind of spirit, you're not going to go and show up and give your best because you're not at your best. And so, what I figured out early on is I'm going to have fun. Once I find this career is no longer fulfilling, then I'm going to go to the next step. But it also happened that I had a much bigger dream. For example, when I started my career as a US Marine, my passion wasn't in becoming a lifelong military officer. When I got out of the Marine Corps and I started working in law enforcement, my lifelong dream was not to become a police officer for the rest of my life. There were things that I wanted to do, but there were steps that I knew that needed to get me there. And so that's how I've been able to have fun at so many careers that are kind of related and connected, but that have allowed me to grow into the place that I am today, where I get to teach and guide others how to communicate, how to build the relationships, and how to just become better individuals.
Right, Steve. And I wonder, I'm just wondering about such a remarkable story of yours. But one thing that comes to mind firstly is, what is your story? And because you talk about your storytelling, you talk about you are not your story. But here I will certainly want to know for the audience, what is your story, because your story is still very much on the president of the VOI award. So that's another thing getting added to what you have already done. you know First thing is, how did you decide in your life as to what will you do next? Because obviously, when in any role that you were in, either as a US Marine or in as a police officer, I'm sure you were having fun. What is it that that made you decide it's time to move on? Because I understand it is not an easy life for anyone. You have had your own shares of a share of problems or difficulties in your life. You overcome them. So as an individual, how how would you like to tell what exactly is your story, and what was the guiding force to for you to create that story for yourself?
Beautiful question, AJ. Thank you. The the story begins really. Well, first of all, I need to say that I almost didn't make it to this interview. I almost didn't make it to this interview because I tried to commit suicide. This was just a few years ago when I was 17 years old. And the reason that I tried to commit suicide several times, AJ, is because I grew up believing that I was good for nothing. This is the name that my parents had given me when I was a young child. There was nothing I could do that was respectable, that was of quality, that was of value in their eyes. So I grew up asking those questions like, who am I? What is my value? What is my worth? And feeling like I had none. And so when I say I almost didn't make it to this interview is because had I followed through with my ideas back when I was 17 years old, you and I would not have this meeting, right? So a friend of mine in high school had given me a book. It's a beautiful book called The Power of Positive Thinking by Norman Vincent Peale. And the author talks about how you can change your thoughts and how you can change your world. I didn't know that it was possible to change your thoughts, but I knew that I could change my world. And to me and to my young mind at 17 years old, my changing my world was running away from home, taking myself away from my parents and from my home. And that's when I joined the United States Marine Corps. And during that 13-week period of Marine Corps training, I found out that I was not the good for nothing that my parents had programmed me to believe, because it is all programming. They didn't do it intentionally. I learned this years later. I didn't know it at the time. At the time, I thought, who are these crazy people? Why do they hate me so much? And why am I here? And all of these questions, right? But what I've learned through all this, AJ, is that we only know that which we know. In other words, if our parents, if some one of your listeners is struggling with what is my value, what is my worth, where do I belong, and it's because of the programming that they're being given at home by their parents or the school teachers or their spouse, perhaps, we need to realize that those parents, those teachers, those spouses probably came from a very negative environment, as did my parents. So my parents thought that showing love, that expressing love was you beat your children, you insult your children, you use sarcasm, all of these things. They thought that that was showing love because they were showing they care. I care about you, so I'm going to make sure that you don't do this again. And you get a beating, or you get, insults thrown at you. You get punished, all these kinds of things. That was the way they grew up, knowing how to express love. And so once I became aware of this as an adult, I was able to make that shift in my mind saying, well, that's completely incorrect. That's not love. It's certainly not how you express love. And if that's what you believe, you can make the difference. You can make that change in generations going forward. And so during the 13 weeks of Marine Corps boot camp, I was awarded the class valedictorian. How does a good for nothing boy get presented the class valedictorian? I did it in service of others. It happened that, real quickly, it happened that there were three other recruits in my class, three other trainees who were primarily Spanish speaking. So they were having a trouble with the academic portion of the training because of the English and Spanish language. Nobody asked me to do this, AJ, but I took those three guys every night after everyone had gone to sleep, and we would go sit in the shower floors, and we would read that day's academic materials, and I would translate it from English to Spanish. We would have a discussion, and then we kept doing this until the end of the training. At the end of the training, we had the final exam, and if you don't make the final exam, you don't become a Marine. Final exam, I graduated number one in the class, and my three friends graduated number 10. And I was rewarded, not because I was asked to, again, nobody suggested it, but the drill instructors, right, the leaders of the class saw that I had this capacity to serve others, and they said, we're going to reward this. So that was my first life lesson, that everything my parents had told me about myself was completely wrong, that I was good for a whole bunch of things. And I've continued that trajectory. As you point out, I've had difficult times. I've been divorced. I've been depressed. I've filed financial bankruptcy. And so not everything has been rosy. But when I was down, I didn't stay down. When I was down, I didn't stay broken. When I was down, I surrounded myself with the people that I know love me and support and encourage me, and I was able to find my way to the next step, right? And so this is why I say you are not your story, right? I could very well live the victim and say, oh, poor me, I was beaten as a child, I was abused as a child, I was discriminated against in the professional arena. This happened to me, this happened to me. A lot of people live their lives like that. They share that with other people. AJ, why? Because they get love, or what they think is love. They get attention. Oh, poor you. That happened to you. Oh, I'm so sorry. Come here. Let's go have a drink. Let's go, whatever. Right. So once we figure out that we are not our story, yes, those things happen to us, and they're very bad things that happen to some people. There's no getting away from that. But once you realize that you have the capacity to change, and not just be, AJ, the actor in your story, be like your favorite film. The favorite film, what happens if the writer or the director on that film doesn't like the way the scene is going? He says, cut.
Right.
All the action stops, and he says, no, I need you to do this. I need you to be positioned over here. I need you to leave the scene. I need to rewrite the outcome of this story. We have that capacity, but we don't take advantage of it because we don't know that we have that permission. I'm giving you permission, and I know that through your beautiful show here, you give your audience permission to change their lives. And yes, I know that some people live in some very, very difficult times, abuse and poverty and discrimination and crime and those kinds of things. But those are circumstances for you to learn, okay, I don't belong here because this doesn't feel good. Let me go somewhere there where it feels good and where I can be of service to one another. So that's my message, where I say, you're not your story. You're not. It happened to you. You were in the story. You're part of the story. But now you can become the director and change the story. You can become the writer and write a new ending for your story. You can become the producer and change the people around you, because that's what the producer does. The producer brings in all of the elements. What are the elements that we need to make this story come to life? And the producer brings that new neighborhood, new job, new house, new spouse, new ideas, new mentality, new clothes, whatever you have to change about yourself. You have the permission to do that.
Right, Steve. Right. A lot of our young people, like when you were 17, uh, your friend gave you a book. It helped you understand things in a much better perspective. Not everybody has a friend like you had. What would you tell them if they don't have a friend like you had? What exactly should guide them when they are thinking the way at one point in time when you were 17 you were thinking, and the distance between the between that unfortunate step is very very less. What is it that can bring them back from there, and exactly that you are not what somebody else says, you are much more beyond that, and you can do remarkably well in the future that is yet to unfold? What would you
Yes.
tell?
AJ, you asked such beautiful questions. Thank you. Um, it happens that excuse me, we live in a beautiful time where we have all of this technology available to us that we didn't have when I was growing up as a child, and that you also, AJ, did not have when you were growing up as a child. We had encyclopedias, we had dictionaries, we had libraries, and those weren't friendly, right? Those weren't very useful to us. But today, anybody can go online and just type in, I need help. Um, there are so many organizations out there that help people that are in depression, that are feeling bad, that are feeling negative thoughts, that having these suicidal ideas that can get help. So what I want to suggest is that we are only one question away from the answer that we're looking for. And here's another shift that I would like to share with your audience, AJ, is that don't seek the answers. Don't seek the answers. Instead, seek the right question. Seek the better question. Because when you seek answers, you tend to play the victim. You said, why did this happen to me? Why am I such a loser? Why am I such a failure? Why am I poor? Why am I this, that, or the other? Right? But if we ask a better question, or we seek to ask a better question and say, how can I improve my life? How can I get out of this situation? Who can help me to get out of this situation? Now our mind shifts just by asking the right question now, just like a computer. And I love that we're talking
Right,
about technology,
right,
because
right.
when you go into a computer program, if you type in the question or the terminology, the computer goes searching for those keywords and brings you articles, videos, all those kinds of things. And our mind is like that too. So when you say, how can I get help? How can I become better? How can I become a better leader? How can I serve the community? How can I do more? Your mind goes to work just like your computer and starts searching the answer. Well, you could volunteer. Well, you could give your time over to this children's charity. Well, you could give $1 a day to this homeless shelter. Well, you can go and help somebody home with their groceries, right? Like you said at the beginning, we're all here to serve one another. I truly believe, as you do, that this is our purpose in life. And we have merely chosen to serve as a police officer, as a lawyer, as a doctor, as a real estate agent, as a chef, as a maintenance person, as an engineer. That's how we serve. But the fact is that we are in service of other people. If you own a restaurant, you do it to serve other people. If you're a police officer, you do it so you can serve the community. If you're a doctor, you're serving the community. Oh, yeah, you're a big shot doctor, but that's not who you are. It's only what you do. And this is another thing people get confused is, oh, this is my job. This is what I am. No, it's not what you are. That's only what you do. You're an understanding, loving, compassionate human being. That's how you were created. And you have just chosen to serve as a lawyer. That's it. And anytime you want, you can switch from serving as a lawyer to serving as a doctor to serving as a social worker to serving as a teacher. It's all about serving others. Once you find that out, where your heart for service is, your whole life will change. You'll realize that you do have value, that you do have worth, and that you do have something to contribute to the world. And that's what's missing when we're wanting to commit suicide. We don't know what our true value is.
Right, right, Steve. You have been guided by two main principles that you had during your Marine days, US Marine days. Leave no one behind, and I achieve my dreams helping others achieve theirs. Very nice principles. The world has changed a lot since, and changing very fast indeed. How in these changing times, and especially for young people who have their own aspirations, who want to achieve, can do both the things together, not to leave anyone behind and to help others, but in that process not to leave the individual in them behind. How do you make sure that the individuality part, the true part, the one you are, who has to achieve so many things in the future, is not left behind, and make still making sure that you are also not leaving behind? Because sometimes in these times you have to leave. There is toxicity, there is mental pressure, stress, a whole lot of people in mass and camouflage. How do you make sure that you are helping the right people, and you are also not leaving, taking, carrying the people who are not, you are actually not, they are a baggage to you? How do you manage all these aspects together in this life journey of one?
Again, that's a beautiful question, and I like your perception of that question. How do we not leave anybody behind, including yourself? Because you're right. So many of us, we step into a role or a career or a position in society, and we forget who we are. Right? We forget that we're that loving, compassionate, understanding human being as we were created, and we become this power hungry maniac, or we seek money, or we seek addictions, we seek sex, drugs, whatever it is, that we think that that is what we're here to do. But to answer your question more directly, clarity is the key. We need to become, especially today, because there's so much coming at us, so many opportunities, so many suggestions, so many uh, uh, career options, opportunities to travel, opportunities to meet and become involved with other people. We need clarity, and we need clarity very, very early on in our lives. And by clarity, I mean, what do you want for your life? Ask that very early on when you're 16, 17, 18 years old. And this is in our generation, AJ, we didn't have that privilege. And so I don't know if in your culture you have this concept of midlife crisis. Do they have that in?
This is everywhere. They
This is
talk
every
about
okay,
it.
okay. I wasn't aware if the beautiful Indian culture experienced that, but midlife crisis means what? You're in your 50s and 60 years old, and you start you leave your spouse, you start dating younger women, you start going to the gym, you buy a fancy car, all of these things, you become more free, all of these things. And people say this is a midlife crisis, and I say no, it's not a midlife crisis. This is simply the individual getting to the point in their life where they start to ask the questions that we should have asked when we were 16, 17, 18 years old. Who am I? What do I want? How do I want my life to look like? How do I want to serve? Right? Those four questions. Who am I? What do I want for my life? What do I want my life to look like? And how do I want to serve? As I mentioned early on, we're programmed that we're supposed to go to school and become a lawyer or a doctor or an engineer, and that's who we are. But yet we get into an engineering career 20, 30 years down the line, and we've got 6 kids and we've got a mortgage and we've got bills, and we're not happy because we rather be making music, we rather be dancing, we rather be painting, we rather be taking photography, right? We rather do all these things that really make our hearts sing, but we don't do it. And so if you start getting clarity when you're early in your life as a young adult, 16, 17, 18 years old, who am I, what do I want my life to look like? Then you can start making decisions early on that will continue to move you on that journey, as opposed to just jumping into something, becoming completely dissatisfied, and losing yourself in the process. Because when we lose ourselves, we can't serve others, right? If you're in an airplane, and I know that many of your audience has flown recently, hopefully, no more COVID lockdown and we're able to travel, but and the oxygen pressure uh, requires the masks to come down. If you're dizzy and you're fumbling around, you can't even put your own mask on, so you're not good for you. You certainly can't be good for anybody else. But they tell you put your own mask on first. In other words, save yourself first, because then you'll have the strength, the courage, the ability, the stamina to help someone else. And this is part of the leave no one else behind. You have to take care of yourself first: health, emotional, intellectual, physical, right? Exercise, eat well, eat healthy. I'm not saying don't enjoy alcohol or any of these other things if that's what you want to do, but do it responsibly, right? Don't just say that this is my diet. And so do these things for yourself, because now you're in a position to help others. And yes, you're right. We can't help all 9 billion people on the planet. Is it 9 billion or 8 billion? 8 billion people on the planet. We can't. You can only help those who want to be helped. And this is, again, seeking clarity. Clarify, who is this person that wants to be part of my life? What value do they bring to my life? And what value can I offer them? If they're not going in your direction, and you're clear that this is where you want to go, you can't bring them along with you. But you can still love them. You can still say, you know what, I respect your ideas. You are entitled to live life however you see it, as long as it serves you, and go for it. But I can't be part of that. So if you're in a situation where you've got a spouse or a child or a friend that's wanting you to engage in activity that doesn't sit well with you, you can say, look, I love you. Go do your thing. Okay. Not try and control them. And this is the hard part, is we try and control other people. Not try and control them, but let them go off and do their thing. But you do not have to be part of that. You continue on your journey. And if they're supposed to be aligned with you, they will come back and say, you know what, I made some mistakes. But we all have to go through those mistakes, AJ. Remember when we were kids and our parents said, don't touch the stove because it's hot? What did we do?
We touched it and
We
learned
touched it and learned. Exactly.
after getting burned.
After getting burned. And then we said, oh, yeah, you're right. And the parents said, aha, see, I told you. That's just human nature. We're curious that way. So someone can tell us all day long, don't be with that person. They're bad for you. Don't go into this career. Don't be making money selling drugs. Don't do this, don't do that. They're going to say, you know what? I need to figure this out on my own. And they're going to. And we must give them that freedom to express themselves, to live the life that they want, until they choose to make a different decision.
Right, right. Many people choose to, chase success. You say don't chase success because it is detrimental to our achieving success. Now, why do you say so? And secondly, how do you then keep focus? How do you set goals? Isn't success the goal in whatever you want to do? Please help us understand this better.
Another great question. Where do you come up with these, AJ? That's wonderful. The Here's the problem with success. Um, you can sit 10 people in a room, 100 people in the room, a million people in the room. You will not walk away with one concrete definition of what success is, because it's different for everyone, and it's different even for us at different times in our lives. When we're in high school, success means perhaps getting good grades, perhaps being able to ask out the cheerleader or the football player and graduating. Then we're in college, success means different things. We're out of college, success now means getting married, having a family, and becoming involved in your community, for example, right? So it keeps changing. So, how can we pursue something where there's no clear definition of what it is? So, we're telling our children, we're telling ourselves, you must become successful. You have to be a success. You're going to be a failure. And I think that this is wrong thinking. That thinking is wrong, AJ, for the reason I stated. There's no true definition of success. And here's the problem: success is not a person. As much as you, AJ, have achieved in your life, you are not a success. I'm not a success. I have succeeded, but I'm not a success. Do you see the difference?
Right. Right.
Success is simply the opposite of failure. Two sides, opposite sides of the same coin. So success and failure are the outcomes of events. And so let's reframe this whole success idea. If I say, okay, tomorrow morning I'm going to wake up, put on my hiking boots, and I'm going to climb the tallest mountain in me. And I go and I get all my gear and I climb to the very top of the mountain, I succeeded in my intended task. But if something happens along the way on my journey to the top of the mountain, I get sick, the weather comes on me, my equipment breaks or something, the event fails. But most people say, I'm a failure. I'm a failure. No, you're not the failure. The event failed. The event succeeded. Let's give another example. Have you ever been in a car accident, AJ?
Uh, Fortunately, no, no, Steve.
No. Okay. Have you ever had uh, an injury of any sort? Did you injure yourself,
Yes,
fall off?
yes, several of them keep on
Okay.
happening.
Let's say you're riding your bicycle and you, I don't know, run into a curb and you fall down. You have an accident on your bicycle or your motorcycle or your car. Do we walk away from that saying, I'm such an accident? Do we?
No, you don't. You don't.
No, we don't consider ourselves an accident yet. We were involved in the accident. We may have caused or contributed to the accident, but we don't walk away saying to ourselves, I'm such an accident. I've been an accident all my life. Why do I do that? Why do we do that with success and failure? I'm such a failure. I've failed all my life. I'm such a failure. No, you're not. You are neither a success nor a failure. Those are simply outcomes of an event. What you are, again, is a remarkable human being who is compassionate, loving, understanding, who is, if your intention is right, who is out there doing their best to accomplish something. If you accomplish something, the event succeeds. Yay, you can celebrate. And if you don't succeed, if the event fails, whatever you intended to do, if it fails, you can still celebrate. Why? Because now you know how to make it work. Now you know what doesn't work. Now you know what will work, or you can give yourself another opportunity to go and do it again and again and again until you get the result that you want. So this is why I say that success causes a lot of problems for so many people in our society. Because what's more, the way we measure success, AJ, is I look at you and say, "Oh, look at AJ has a 10,000 square foot home on the top of the hill overlooking the ocean, and he's got servants and he's got a beautiful kitchen and a chef and a brand new car. But yet I don't have that. So I don't feel successful. Yet I've been a Marine, I've been a law enforcement officer, I've been a lawyer, I've been a singer-songwriter, recording artist, I've traveled the world, I've done this, I've done, but in order for me to feel successful, I have to compare myself to you. And that's wrong. We are all on our different journey. None of us are going to do the same things in the same way at the same time. I may aspire to have the kind of lifestyle that AJ has, or the kind of influence that AJ has. But the way I will do that is by seeing what AJ does and then following the principles that he uses, because those principles, value based principles, are going to work for me too. But I don't need to sit here and feel bad because AJ has more than I do. And that's the difference between living remarkably and pursuing this notion of success that, again, no one really knows what it means.
No one really knows what it means. And I guess this will continue to get defined and redefined with the way, the society is moving forward. But one thing remains, I think, will remain constant, as you said, that, you know, you run up, don't run behind success. You have to achieve distinction in whatever you do and move on to something that it makes you happy. Now,
Exactly.
looking at life itself, there, as you go on the journey of life, there are happy incidents, very sad incidents, and maybe bad incidents. People whom you serve can raise fingers at you, and that can be very painful. How do you deal? Like, you served your country as a marine and police officer, yet you were subject to deportation. Now, that is a very difficult thing for anybody. In the same way, there are many things that happen in families, friends, places you work. Suddenly, situation is not the same. You serve a company, and the next morning they ask you not to. You are not even. You cannot even enter the premises to even say a formal goodbye to all the people you work with.
Mm.
Such is life. How should one look at these things? How did you look at such painful incidents in your own life? What would you tell others about how to overcome these things, how to look beyond that, how to continue on the forward journey towards living remarkably?
Another brilliant question, AJ. You're right. Things will happen, and bad things will happen, what we call bad things. But we must recognize that what I consider bad may be considered good in somebody else's eyes. Excuse me. What our society considers evil may be considered very appropriate in another society or in another community. So we cannot judge a circumstance. We should not, let me say that, because we do judge it all the time, but we should not judge a circumstance as good or bad. The circumstance happened, right? We get fired from a job. Our spouse says they want a new life, they want a new partner. Our children say, I'm gonna quit school and I'm going to move and I'm going to travel the world with my backpack and my boyfriend or my girlfriend, and we're just going to live off the land. uh, an eviction notice comes, again, you get fired, whatever the case may be. These are the circumstances of life that will happen. What we need to look at is, why is it happening for me, not to me? Because if we say, oh, this happened to me, we put ourselves in the role of the victim with no control, with no power, with no way out. This happened to me. Again, going back to the you are not your story. Yes, you are the victim. This did happen to you, but now where do you go from here? So, for example, many times I've gotten fired twice from two companies in my career. And this was well before I became a personal development expert and well before I had studied and researched how the human mind works and how we should look at life and how to live remarkably. This was well before. So I remember being angry. I remember being frustrated. I remember being, how dare they? Don't they know that I'm a good employee? And these kinds of thoughts. But then my next job took me to becoming a lawyer. Now, Had I stayed at that initial job, it was an okay job, but I didn't have aspirations of being a lawyer then, right? So the job that I was fired from led me to a new job in law enforcement. And that put me in a position to work in a court where one of the judges that I worked for said, "You know what, Steve? You have a lot of talent, you have a lot of capacity and potential. You should go to law school." And I thought, you know what? I hadn't thought of going to law school, but sure, why not? So now I became a lawyer. And now I'm living life bigger, better, more grander, helping, serving more people in a way that I never could have served in the job that I was fired from. You see? But I didn't know that at the time that I got fired. It's only afterwards I can look back and connect the dots and say, I didn't belong in that job. I didn't belong in that relationship. I've been married to my beautiful wife now for 13 years. Yet I've been in relationships previously where I was sad and disappointed and depressed that the relationship didn't work out. However, looking back, there's no way I could have accomplished what I've accomplished and have the magic in the relationship that I have now if it hadn't been for those previous breakups, right? Or the divorce. And so part of that is hindsight, but most of it is if we will just recognize that things will happen. They're happening for a reason. It's either to assign for you to, it's time to move on. You've you're no longer fulfilled here. If you really look at it, you're probably disappointed at the at the job that you have. You probably don't like it. You probably in the back of your mind, if you really examined it, at one point or another said, I hate this job. I don't want to be here. I want something better. But you never took action on those thoughts. And so what the universe does, the universe will make those decisions for us sometimes, knowing that, come on, like the little bird out of the nest, the parents will shove you out and you need to spread your wings so that you can fly. That's all it is. And so, again, it's asking your audience, asking the listeners to reframe those, what we consider negative events in our lives. Let's reframe them and realize that, okay, it happened, it sucks, it hurts, it's painful, it's not fun. The timing couldn't be worse, but there is something better to come from this. And let me now start asking the right questions, how I can develop into that next step of my journey.
Right. Next step of your journey. And now you are not talking about yourself, you are talking about awarding others, VOI awards. Tell us about this, Steve.
Thank you, AJ. The Voices of Impact Awards was born because I have had the privilege of being on beautiful shows like yours and speaking on stages around the world where I get to share my story and I get to guide and teach people how to do whatever it is that they want to do in their relationships, in their careers, and with themselves. And invariably, people always come up to me and say, Steve, thank you for sharing your story. I was so moved, I was motivated, inspired, impacted. And I say, great, thank you for that. But do you know that you have a beautiful story too that can inspire and motivate others? And it took me a while, AJ, to realize that there's no real platform for the average individual to go and share their story where they become celebrated, where they become supported and encouraged. And I realized that I know that in the Indian film community, I think they call it Bollywood, right? The
Yes,
the
yes.
Bollywood, we celebrate the people who portray the characters living out the real life, right? Something happens in the society, in the community, and a writer says, you know what, I want to write this story and bring it to film or television or to the theater and make a play out of it. And we celebrate the actors. Yay! Good job portraying the role of this person. And we celebrate them all day long and we look up at them and they go, oh, they're so beautiful. They're so this. Why don't we celebrate the people that actually live the stories? So we created the Voices of Impact Awards to celebrate the stories that inspire humanity. Because AJ, you have a beautiful story about you and your life. You get to interview all day long on your amazing show the stories of other people, but yet nobody was celebrating them, right? And stories is how you and I connect with each other. Oh, I can relate to that. Oh, I see what you've been through. Now I can respect you. I can admire you. I can understand you from a different vantage point. Now I don't see the color of your skin. I don't hear your accent. I don't hear your, hair, no hair, how tall you are, how big you are, how little you are. Nothing. But I know your story. And because I know your story, now I can connect with you as one human to another. So we created this awards program to celebrate these people with inspiring stories. The event happens in September of 2023 here in Denver, Colorado, in the United States. And right now, it's only for US based participants who want to step up and share those stories. And they're going to be able to present their stories on stage and possibly win a $20,000 cash prize, which is a lot of money, plus additional awards. And then after this first year is done, then we will move it into international as well.
Right, right, Steve. So, three things here. One is, how do people connect with you to get your help as a coach? Second is about the book, How to Live Remarkably, and any other that is in the pipeline or anything that I've missed. And the third is, how do they connect you for being a part of VOI Awards?
Wonderful. Thank you for those questions. The first thing I ask people or recommend to people, the first thing I recommend to people is that if you want to reach me, contact AJ. Thank AJ for having me on his show because that's how you and I became known to each other. And also thank him for having all the other beautiful guests on his show that he's had. AJ will know how to reach me. He will also be very appreciative of you contacting him. So that would be the first thing I recommend that you do. Um, the second thing is How to Live Remarkably is available on Amazon and it's available worldwide. So you could just go to Amazon.com in your country and type in How to Live Remarkably by Steve Gallegos, and you can have the book sent to you. To participate in the Voices of Impact Awards, you just have to go to voiawards.com and AJ will have the link in the show notes so that you can go and register. And don't worry, if you've never shared your story before, we train you, we guide you, we mentor you as part of the registration process to do that. So we're not going to let you, again, leave no person behind. We're taking all of you with us. And then
Wonderful.
and then lastly, I do teach communications. I have a communications intensive workshop that's a 4-day workshop live here in Denver called How to Become a Natural Born Speaker, which teaches people how to present, how to be on stage. We put them on camera and we teach them how to eliminate the fear of public speaking, which I don't think exists. But a lot of people think they have a fear, but we can help you eliminate that. So you can contact me on social media. But like I said, first contact me through AJ.
Right. That's so nice of you, Steve. In fact, what I'll do is I'll put this information on the YouTube description and wherever possible so that people can also reach directly to you. You are in communication. There should not be, a lot of hassles in between. I would like to put as much information as possible so that more and more people can get the best out of you in the best manner possible.
Thank you for
My
that.
last question to you, Steve, is looking back at your life, looking back at the 17-year-old who was looking things differently. Now you have lived life well, so many roles, and live now adding value to in every sphere of your life. How do you see this journey? How do you see your parents? You said, I didn't understand why they thought that way. Now you do. How do you see that part? What would you tell people to look at people who are very close to them and they show their love differently and perhaps not in the right manner uh, many a times, but they don't understand things. So how do you look at that part? And overall, what would you look at your story as? Would you look at it as a successful story, as a not successful story, which is not, or as something, as a great story or a remarkable life?
Thank you for that. What I would recommend is that if we're in a relationship with our parents, with our siblings, with our spouse, with our coworkers, where they're treating us with indifference, with anger, with rejection, with discrimination, with abuse, we need to one get clear what we want for our lives, because so many times, and this is as adults now, I'm not talking about children. As adults, we have the awareness, or we must develop the awareness of what we want for our lives, because so many people will stay in a situation that does not serve them, that is a negative environment for them, because we're not clear on what we want. Once you develop that clarity, now you have the power to make the change. Do not wait for the other person to change themselves, because they may not ever. But if I have to rely on you, AJ, if we're friends, let's say we're business associates, and something is happening that I'm not behaving, or I'm not acting or producing to the level that you expect, you cannot wait for me to change. You must take the control, the power, and say, Steve, this is not working out for me. I need to make new decisions to move my company forward, or to move our product or service forward. But if we just sit back and say, well, Steve's going to change, Steve's going to change, Steve may not change. And yet, you in this example, you become stagnant, you become stuck, right? In whatever the situation is. So don't expect the other person to change. You need to change. And sometimes that means you need to eliminate that person or that situation, that career, that job from your life. Again, going back to developing clarity. What do I want my life to look like? What does it feel like? Right? What do I want? And move towards that. Then recognize that whoever it is in our lives that is causing us pain and discomfort and abuse and discrimination, that they learned this somewhere. They learned it somewhere. Perhaps it was incorrect teaching that they received. And maybe it's up to us to train them or to teach and guide them otherwise. And maybe we can't, because they won't listen to us. We're too close to the situation, right? Especially in the situations of abuse, where the husband will say to the wife, you don't know what you're talking about, just shut up. You're not going to talk to your friends, you're not going to talk to anybody. He or she learned that somewhere, and that's their view of the world. Going back to clarity, if that's not your view of the world, you can make new choices to move yourself into a different environment. I'm not saying it's easy, but it's something that you have to do. You must accept full responsibility for everything that is going on in your life, even if somebody else is causing it. Because if you don't, you put the blame on them, and you put the responsibility on them to change. They may not do it in the time that you need them to do it. So you need to take control, accept responsibility, and say, I'm going to make the change. And then you do that. And the reason we're in these negative situations is, again, because life gives us contrast. I did a TED talk not too long ago where I shared, if we lived on a beautiful island, sun was shining all the time, beautiful waves, beautiful ocean, nothing to do, no work, no stress, no newspapers, no dilemmas, no drama. AJ, what would we do with our lives? No problems to solve? No challenges to face? No. We humans thrive on solving problems. We humans thrive on overcoming challenges. We thrive on this. Otherwise, everybody would be on vacation all the time. And how boring is that? right? To have just beautiful sunshine all day long, no problems. The world is happy, happy, right? Many of us long for a world like that, but that's not reality. We're here to serve, remember? And the only way we can serve is if we are presented by people who need our compassion, who need our love, who need our understanding.
Wonderful, wonderful, Steve. My last question here is that is there anything for you to achieve? You have achieved so much. What is it that you now look for yourself?
Oh, wow, what a great question. Um, I'm only getting started. I'm just getting started. What my focus right now is the Voices of Impact Awards. I want this to become an international event, and I want this to be the premier event for the average individual that's not a celebrity, that's not rich, that's not the average individual that works as a nurse, as a lawyer, as a doctor, as a first responder, as a police officer, somewhere that has stories and they've been through challenges and have lessons that they can share with others to inspire them to do better and be better. That is my number one focus right now. That is where I think I want to um, leave. This is my legacy project, if you will, because this is something that is going to live on for years and years and years and decades to come, where we celebrate each other, where we celebrate and honor the stories and the challenges that we've been through.
Wonderful, wonderful. And I like that. I've just got started. And I'm sure, with this great interview of yours, with lots of words of wisdom, a lot of people will certainly get started to live a life, live a remarkable life. With this, it's a it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
Thank you, AJ.